When I was 16, I had a friend named Simon. And Simon was a fairly troubled young guy, kind of like myself, from a broken home and had some other issues that confused him at times. But Simon had stayed overnight one night, and the morning when we got up, he came up with a great idea for how to spend the day. He said, "How would you like to go down and kick some holes in the wall at this Catholic school?" Doesn't that sound like a great idea, way to spend the day? I looked at him and thought, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, my mom works there, and I got her keys, and I got the security code, so we can get in there. Nobody will know." And in our town where we grew up, the Catholics and the Protestants were kind of still at each other's throats, and so he thought this would be a great idea to go mess up the Catholic school. I kind of looked at him and said, I don't think so, Simon. He says, "Come on, it'd be great." "No." He says, "Well, can I use your phone?" "Okay." So he calls up another guy we knew, and that guy said, "Sure." So he says, "Well, I'm out of here." He says, "See you later." And he leaves to go meet up with the guy and go break into the Catholic school. And I found myself with a little bit of a dilemma, because I'm thinking, this is a bad idea. He's going to get into trouble. It's a bad idea because it's the wrong thing to do. And now I know about it, so what am I supposed to do, right? So I did what every smart 16-year-old does. I went and asked my mom what to do. And I thought, Mom will figure this out. I'm just going to go tell her Simon's going to school. We've got to do something. What should we do? And I said, "Mom, here's the deal. Simon's got his mom's keys. He's going down there. What should we do?" And my mom looked at me. She said, She said, "What do you think we should do?" "Come on. I want off the hook. I don't want to decide. This guy's one of the few friends I had at the time. I wasn't happy with him, but I didn't want to lose a friend." But she says, "What do you want to do?" And it's really the first moment I can recall where my mother truly set me free to decide for myself on a major issue. Usually, parents were all, pretty good at this and telling our children what to do, right? But at that moment, she didn't tell me what to do. She said, "What do you think you should do? What do you want to do about this?" And then she adds, that little knife and sticks it in twists. She says, "Whatever you decide is okay with me." Come on. Give me something. Give me some advice. I didn't know what to do. And the reality is, freedom, the right to choose for yourself, comes with a heavy burden, doesn't it? It was at that moment I realized how big a deal it was to choose for myself. That I really was struck by, does what I believe matter? Because I believed that what he was going to do was wrong. And I knew that I could do something about it. I didn't know what I could do about it, but I knew I could do something. I could maybe call the police. I could, call his parents. I could have done any number of things. But I realized the pressure, the burden of freedom at that moment. When somebody says, "You decide." Maybe some of us know that in a lesser sense. Every time you go to town out for dinner and you say to your spouse or your partner or whoever, "What do you want for dinner?" And they say, "I don't know, what do you want?" You're thinking, don't make me choose, right? And that's an easy one, isn't it? That's an easy one. I found out the solution for that is just tell your wife this is what you're thinking, and then she can say yes or no. It's usually easier. Just have a list. And start with the thing she hates most, because then she'll take the next thing, whatever it is. God's grace is kind of like my mother saying, "You decide." What Jackie was alluding to with her story there, what a great way to tell that story, is that God's grace, in a way, it really is a get-out-of-sin-free card. Because God's grace is so big. What Jesus did was so perfect, so permanent, so complete, that everything we've ever done, everything we're currently doing, and everything we will do that would be called sin is already covered. We really do have the opportunity to decide for ourselves, because of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, to decide for ourselves what we will do and how we will live. God looked at us and said, "I forgive you. Now you decide." The Corinthian church took that idea a little bit too far as the problem. The city of Corinth was notorious for being the city dedicated to Aphrodite, the goddess of love. The problem is, just like today, with what society and the media has done, they turned the concept of love into lust. And so the temple of Aphrodite had 1,000, count them, 1,000 prostitutes there just so you could express love to the goddess, rather. And the Christians in the city of Corinth thought to themselves, "You know what? This sounds like a really good idea. I mean, we're allowed to do whatever we want. We can decide because we're free and grace covers us. And we want to express love." Is that right? And so they were partaking of the prostitutes. Needless to say, Paul had some issues with this. And so he writes them this letter to address the question, do we really have total freedom? Are we really totally free to do whatever we want, whenever we want, with whoever we want to do it with? But I'd like to look at this passage with you today with the hope of discovering what freedom really is all about. Paul starts in an interesting place. He starts by affirming the very freedom that Jackie reminded us of and that the Corinthians themselves believed they had. He says, everything is permissible for me. But, there's always a but, you notice that? Not everything is beneficial. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. It's an interesting place to start. Because we know in our guts, literally, that not everything is good for us. Debbie and I just got back from Florida, and we did something we don't do very much here, and that's that we ate out every single night. Every day, most of our lunches and most of our dinners were spent at really nice restaurants having things that we don't normally eat. You know, bigger quantities, and, you know, the 16-ounce steak, I really liked it. It was really, really, really good. It was allowed. Okay, nobody said don't do that. All right, I was free to have that 16-ounce steak. That's a pound of meat for those of you who don't get them. Okay, that's a big, big steak, right? Thick. Oh, it was good. It was permissible. I can tell you from personal experience, it was not beneficial. Because for the next number of hours, all I could do was moan. You know, and after a while, like I spent 2 weeks doing this, eating too much and every single meal for hours afterwards thinking, where's the Rolaids? Okay? And we laugh. We think that's funny. But the reality is that's the kind of stuff Paul was addressing. Going too far with freedom. Right? I could have had a really nice 6-ounce steak and been comfortable. But no, I had a big piece of meat because I'm a man. Right? That's what guys do, right? And a guy here with us all. They see a menu item, 16 ounces, that's what I want, right? Isn't that true? Paul addresses this. He wants us to get this truth that although everything's allowed, everything's permissible, not everything's good for you, not everything's beneficial. Right? I know it's an oxymoron to say it, but watching the news can be good, even though there's no good news, right? Being aware of what's going around us can be good. To know what's going on in your community, what's going on in your region, what's going on in the world. You know, all these issues that we face. It's good to be aware. But it's not good when there's been a war on to sit in front of CNN 24/7 and get depressed, right? Allowed? Is it permissible to watch the news? Yes. Is it always beneficial? Not necessarily. Right? We need to just understand the importance of what Paul's saying here to the Corinthian church and to us, is that although God has set us free to choose, to make a decision, because of grace we are covered whatever we do, he's saying, wait a second, yes, you're free, but don't do things that aren't good for you. Don't do things that will hurt you. And then he says it again in a different way. Everything is permissible for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. This is key, guys. This is so important that we understand this, because Paul is really affirming our freedom. He's affirming to the Corinthians, you are free. You're absolutely right. Grace covers you. You are more free than anybody else that doesn't know Jesus Christ, because when you don't know Jesus Christ, it says in Scripture, you're a slave to sin. You have no choices. But when you come to Jesus Christ, you are set free from sin. You are made free in Christ. And what Paul does not want to see happen to the Corinthians, does not want to see happen to us, is that we would lose our freedom because we are bound by addiction, by habits we couldn't break, by things that we just needed. And our society is rampant with this, isn't it? Addiction is what run riot in our society today. You talk to a lot of people make a joke out of it, but how many people have to have their Tims? Every day. They don't get their cup of coffee. Don't talk to them. Right? And we make a joke out of it. You know, for me, for my wife for years, and for me still, I like to have Coca-Cola, and I have too much of it. If I don't have it, guess what happens? I get a headache. That means I'm not in control. It is. And that means I'm less free than I could be. More importantly, Paul says, I'm less free than I should be. Everything's permissible, but I will not be mastered by anything, is Paul's advice. Are you allowed to have those things? Yes. Is it good for you? Maybe not. If it controls you, definitely not. So often we forget that grace set us free to live for Christ. But instead we live for ourselves. We can't allow things to control us. And I mean, the old list that the church came up with of 7 deadly sins was all about this. The idea of wrath, anger, greed, sloth, pride, lust, envy, gluttony. The 7 deadly sins that we've heard about so many times. Those are things that control us, that cost us our freedom. When we're bound up and always angry, we're not able to be free and to love one another. You know, our whole world is designed around these concepts. Nowadays, everything we see in the media is these are good things, right? They make a joke out of people that are angry all the time. Right? Analyze this, anyone? Billy Crystal? Robert De Niro? Movie not long ago? It's funny being angry. That's what society's trying to tell us. Or what do they tell us about being lazy? I mean, some of the funniest characters, the great comedians so-called, that we watch and we laugh at. Their main characteristic is they sit lazy on the couch all day watching TV. And we see this stuff celebrated. Never mind lust, which you can't watch a TV show now without seeing sex outside of marriage. Without seeing them hopping from bed to bed to bed. And we don't talk about this stuff. We don't want to talk about it because it's funny. Because it's our entertainment. It's not meant to be taken seriously. That's what society wants us to believe, isn't it? Well, the city of Corinth was saying the same thing to the Corinthian church. The culture was just like today in that it turned love into lust. 2 Peter, the Apostle Peter warned us of this very thing when he said they promise freedom while they themselves are slaves of depravity. For a man is a slave to whatever has mastered him.